Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables, and whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a café au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate podcast and the last podcast episode or show of 2019 before we step into a brand new year and a brand new decade. That is exciting to say, I have to admit. Today, what I'd like to do is just share with you the top 10 podcast episodes of 2019. Now, I originally was going to share just the top 5, but then when I started to look at the downloads for the top 5, I realized there were a lot of podcast episodes that were so close in. And so therefore I was thinking, okay, I'll have honorable mention. And they said, no, just make it a top 10 list, Shannon, and go with it. And that's what I've brought to you today. Each of these episodes have had more than 15,000 downloads in the past year. And that is because of you, the listeners, tuning in so regularly and sharing what you enjoy about the podcast with regards to the topics. I continue to look at those numbers and see which type of shows listeners are gravitating towards and wanting to listen to, and trying to find similar content or content that, while speaking to me so that it's authentic, will also be of interest to you, the listener. As you know, season 6 of the Simple Sophisticate podcast is well underway. And as I reflect back to September 2014, when the show premiered, I could not have fathomed the engagement it would inspire, the topics and books we would cover and explore, and the people that would want to be on this show. As you know, I don't bring a lot of guests on this show. This is not an interview show, but there are people that I'm curious to meet and want to talk to. And when they as well would like to be on the show, or they seek me out and it's mutual, I bring them on. So thank you to those of you who have introduced people to me as well, because some of the listeners out there have showed me people that, oh my gosh, I didn't know about them. And oh my gosh, I'd love to have them on the show. So that's been a fun journey as well. But one big thank you that I want to extend before I share the top 10 is a thank you to you, the listeners, because as you know, Apple changed the categorization system of all the podcast shows out there, which was actually quite beneficial because it really gave more options and more accuracy to the shows that are available. And I think it really did help this show, because when we selected, with the help of you, the listeners, sharing with me this past spring, summer, that education, self-improvement should be our first category. Our second category was society and culture. And our third category was leisure, home, and garden. And it truly is in no small part because of your contribution in helping decide what the category should be, that this show is number 33 in the United States all time for self-improvement podcasts. There are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there. And in the self-improvement section alone, there are oodles of podcasts. And this one consistently stays in the 30s for all-time podcast episodes. That is because of listeners like yourself tuning in, sharing positive reviews and rankings, and demonstrating to other potential listeners what they love about this show. So thank you very much. In fact, there is an episode that I wanted to talk about that did not make the top 10 list, but I think the only reason it didn't make the top 10 list is because it just aired this December. It was episode 269. 32 Ways to Be Parisian Chic, and it actually pushed this podcast all the way up to number 5 in self-improvement for that particular week. So I'm definitely taking note that Francophile or French-inspired podcast episodes are a favorite of listeners, but I also know so many others are as we get to today's list. Very briefly, as listeners share how and when they listen to the show, I thoroughly enjoy getting these messages, whether it's on Instagram or via my email, and here's just a smattering of how listeners or where listeners listen to this show. One reached out to me this past year when the New York City Marathon took place and shared that she listened to this podcast as she was running the New York City Marathon. Congratulations, by the way. That is an awesome victory. Some listen to it while they're doing their spring cleaning, while starting the day in Australia, while commuting via car or train or subway. Some others while walking and running with their pups, while strolling along a river in the European countryside with their children. while strolling through a park throughout the vast United States, while winding down at the end of the day in a cozy abode in Canada, and in so many other countries around the globe, listeners simply tune in as they go about their everyday lives. Did you know that this show ranked number 16 in South Africa, number 12 in Hong Kong, number 23 in Romania, number 6 in Oman, and number 2 in Spain? This international audience is becoming a community, and I am so humbled and tickled to realize how this community stretches far and wide, but more so how similar we are, no matter where we call home, regarding our interest to live a life of contentment, a life of deep joy and understanding of the world around us, as we strive to contribute positively to its future as we savor the everyday moments. So now to the top 10 episodes of 2019. Number 10 is 34 Inspiring Daily Rituals to Ignite Your Creativity, which was episode 254. Number 9, Celebrating the JOMO, or the Joy of Missing Out, and Enjoying Your Uniquely Chosen Life Journey. That was episode 251. Number 8 is How to Create a Beckoning Sanctuary that Reflects Your Life Journey. That was episode 250. Number 7 is A Lesson for Women Especially, to Learn Sooner. That was episode 249. Number 6 came from our French week this year, episode 258, 22 French beauty secrets worth the investment in either time or money. And the top 5 podcast episodes of 2019 is episode 246, Why Not Tailor Your Life to Fit You? So we have an episode from the February of this last year. And the quote, to give you an idea of what we talked about, is from the book Designing Your Life, How to Build a Well-Lived, Joyful Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. Quote, a well-designed life is a life that makes sense, a marvelous portfolio of experiences, of adventures, of failures that taught you important lessons, of hardships that made you stronger and helped you know yourself better, and of achievements and satisfactions. And that's episode number 246, Why Not Tailor Your Life to Fit You? Our top 4 episode was episode 242, came from January of this past year, 31 ways to practice true self-care and exponentially improve the quality of your life. A quote from the book that inspired it, the book of self-care, Mary Beth Jansen's book, quote, no amount of massages, hot baths, aromatherapy, healthy food, or exercise will sustain us over the span of our lives if not experienced from the layer of our being that is pure consciousness. In other words, there is deeper work that needs to be done, but we can still incorporate these surface pleasure-finding practices into our self-care regimen. Number 3 on this list was episode 253, one of my personal favorites to create as I found myself loving the book that inspired this episode. It is titled 36 Ways to Welcome Joie de Vivre into Your Everyday Life. It comes from Robert Arber's book, Joie de Vivre, Simple French Style for Everyday Living. Quote, I firmly believe that it's the little things we do that eventually add up to a happy life. I am not asking you to change everything about the way you live, but perhaps to reconsider a few details of your daily routine. Remember that Joie de Vivre is not revolutionary, but it is evolutionary. The episode that was the second most listened to and downloaded this year was episode 243. So the episodes from the first of the year really came in strong on this list, probably because they had more time for people to find and search and download, understandably. But I also think that at the beginning of the new year, people are looking for ideas to really start off the year well. And this one is titled 12 Ways to Make Your Mornings Magical. A quote from the book that inspired it, Miracle Morning Millionaires, Hal Elrod says, when you take control of your mornings, you take control of your days. You get to engage with the world under your terms. You can act instead of react. And the number 1 podcast episode of 2019 was the first episode of 2019. Episode 241, Attaining the Change You Seek in the New Year. A quote from the book, The Art of Happiness, A Handbook for Living by the Dalai Lama and Howard C. Cutler. Quote, in bringing about genuine inner transformation and change, the Dalai Lama emphasizes the importance of making a sustained effort. It is a gradual process. There you have it. The top 10 episodes of 2019. Our next new episode will air Monday, January 6th to start off 2020. To find the links to those top 10 episodes, visit the blog's show notes, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/2019 top 10, and you'll have links to all of them, as well as those quotes that I shared on today's show. But before I wrap up, I want to send a big thank you to a listener in Australia, Andrea, who shared a 5-star review on iTunes. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. She titled the review, "A Wealth of Information, Subscribe Now." Thank you, Shannon, for all your knowledge and research that you share on this podcast. I have learned so much about creating my best life in all arenas: style, finance, home, work, health, beauty, relationships, travel, food, all things French, movie reviews, book and podcast recommendations. I love how you summarize a book into a list that I can choose to read if I want to. Your passion for your work truly shines through. Love your blog and books, and I'm hoping there's a third in the future. Merci beaucoup, Shannon. Well, a merci beaucoup to Andrea as well. And thank you very much for tuning in and sharing the detailed reasons as to why you enjoy this podcast. And if you too are enjoying this podcast, your reviews make an amazingly positive difference in the rankings and the awareness of potential new listeners. And I want to thank everyone who has already done that, because so many of you have. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I would like to bring your attention to the next week and a half on the blog, because there is so many top posts that are going to be shared beginning today through the 31st of December. One new post will be shared that reveals the top post of a particular theme or category on this blog. We'll have the top French-inspired post, top British-inspired post, top recipes, top life motivation, top decor. And on the 26th, the blog will be celebrating 10 years. And I still cannot believe that. But I am so thankful and grateful to listeners and readers who have made this possible. As we step into a new decade, I'm going to share a few thoughts of the past 10 years on the blog on the 26th post that's going to go live on Thursday. But I also share 10 books that have influenced me, inspired me, or provided some kind of insider wisdom that I would not have gained had I not read that particular book. So if you're curious as to what those top 10 books are and want a glimpse as to why they made a positive impression on my life, stop by the blog on December 26th, when we celebrate 10 years of simply luxurious living. Thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast this year, and I'll be back in 2020. I love saying that. Bonne journée. Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, visit the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com, or pick up my latest book, Living the Simply Luxurious Life, Making Your Everydays Extraordinary and Discovering Your Best Self, now available on Audible and wherever audiobooks are sold, as well as in paperback and ebook versions. You can also pick up my first book, Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, A Modern Woman's Guide, which is also available in paperback, ebook, and as an audiobook as well. To stay caught up on the most recent episodes of the podcast, blog posts, the cooking show, and receive exclusive news as well as an extra dose of inspiration to jumpstart your weekend, subscribe to the Simply Luxurious Life's free weekly newsletter, which arrives in your inbox each Friday to enjoy with a hot cup of tea or cup of morning coffee. Until next Monday, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Bonne journée!